Hey, this is Vu, and this is going to be some plays that pros likely know and you most likely don't. And there's going to be some ones here that are actually pretty interesting and should help you, so let's take a look. Before we go any further, I want to thank the sponsor for this video, Leadify. Leadify is an AI coach that allows you to improve faster by analyzing your Face-It or matchmaking games and giving you insight into your weaknesses as well as personalized training. Leadify has also implemented a team finder area on their website that will match you based on your skill level, schedule, and ambition, so you can find like-minded players outside of my YouTube comments. Whether you're beginner, intermediate, advanced, or you're a professional player watching my videos trying to be as good as me, Leadify is the app for you. It's also free to use, so give a click to the link in the description and head on over to leadify.com. One thing a lot of people don't know is if you're on the bomb defusing, you don't need to let go then click mouse 1. You can actually hold mouse 1 while defusing, and the second you let go of E, you will immediately start shooting, which means any place where the bomb is planted and your opponent can be looking at you while defusing, what the CT can do is he can sit on the bomb forever, actually defuse it, and if you peek out, he just kills you. So starting with Dust 2, I'll show you a flash combo that a lot of pros are throwing nowadays when they're going for long control and they have one of the later spawns. So they'll usually do something like this: the initial flash over to the right and the second flash above the doors. Now this initial flash is great because it'll blind your opponents, obviously, but not blind teammates coming just out of the doors. And the second one lands high enough that it won't blind anybody coming out of doors. It's actually not even possible unless you turn around and look up. However, anybody fighting those players is going to be full white. So if you're late in a rush, you can come to this corner here and throw two pretty easy jump throw flashes and you'll have a good time. The other really cool utility that a lot of pros are throwing and you won't be able to use on your own necessarily, but is very beneficial if you're playing with a duo partner, is this smoke here. Now this is a 128 ticks throw because I'm not sure how to throw it on 64 tick, but it's actually a one-way smoke, very similar to the Furious smoke on Inferno, which will put out a molly and give you a one-way at the same time. Now, if we look at this with the smoke down, you can see that as a CT, if I place the bot down here, unless I'm scoped in, that bot is almost entirely invisible, and when scoped in, it's still very hard to actually see them, which should give that player a very clear advantage. You could even try using it with a rifle instead of an op if you wanted to get adventurous. Now, most people playing Dust 2 already know about these sorts of smokes that you can throw on platform and play around as a rifler. You know, a smoke on the front there can be very strong. A smoke back here as well can be pretty strong because it's very hard for your opponents to come around that smoke, and it prevents a lot of the time this type of jumping up onto platform to deal with you because they'd have to go all the way wide around. Those smokes are very effective. However, one that a lot of pros are throwing nowadays is one that lands, you know, more around here. And what this is going to do, especially if you're an opper, it's going to create a couple of angles that you can use to try and deal with your opponents, and it'll make it very hard for your opponents to actually deal with you in terms of actually getting a trade. One other thing that isn't exactly a secret, but it's something that no lower level players seem to understand, is how to smoke middle and how to use the mid smoke. Now, the important thing to understand here is that with pretty much every spawn you have on this map, I think there's one spawn where you have to move to throw. You don't have to move to throw this smoke. So please, for the love of God, stop missing this smoke because you're getting blocked. Just on spawn, throw it and run away. You don't need to do anything else. Now, as a B or mid player, what you need to be doing is backing up to the back wall and jumping across like that. Now, if you're playing very specific players, they will understand that maybe they can try and see you over that and wall bang you through it. However, I have not seen at Face-It 10 level or in any level of matchmaking players that consistently do that, even high level players. What this does with that smoke, that jump across there, is it allows you to see people trying to fast cat and you can pivot and deal with that very effectively. Now, one more thing on the B side is this flash here. This is something you don't see too many people throw. However, it is important to know if you're going to play close tunnels. This flash is extremely effective at blinding the later players in a rush, and although they might hear it, they're going to have trouble hearing it with a molly down and, you know, trying to smoke off a molly, throwing their own flashes, that type of thing. That's an extremely effective flash that you can toss and then swing out and get a bunch of kills because it's really not going to be easy to see from your opponents. Another thing that people are starting to realize recently that they didn't notice before is you can actually jump up on the ledge here behind the corner in back sight. This is something you can use to actually catch people off guard that are close window and get some free kills. So over to Mirage, one of the first things you may want to know is a lurk smoke for A ramp that actually acts as a pretty effective one-way. So I've gotten into this little corner here, and then I'm going to aim at this line just out to the right there, and that's going to actually throw a one-way lurk smoke that I can use to see through here. As well, people use this to jump up, although, you know, it's not much of a one-way once you've jumped up. It's actually very effective to punish your opponents if they're playing too heavily soloed on A, potentially draw rotates, and just be really annoying to deal with. Now, one thing a lot of people know on this map is this smoke here. You can see the light on the other side of window, and that means if a player happens to cross past that light, you're going to be able to tell that they're there very easily because the light will disappear, and so you know they're walking into window. Now, one that a lot less people know is this light in Palace. Now, this one is a little bit less effective because they need to move fairly specifically for this to work. However, if they do cross into the smoke, or they do something like cross to try and post up on you as the smoke is coming down in that corner, you will be able to see them if you're sitting here on the ladder. This ladder you can get low enough that you can see them if they cross in the way you're thinking. However, unfortunately, if they cross into the back corner here, because they're behind the light, you won't have any information, but still, it can be useful in some specific scenarios. Another thing that can be useful to know is something a lot of people don't know. This jump spot B like this. This is the safer way to jump spot B that nowadays a lot of teams are using, that you can just easily spot your opponents as you're jump spotting over here. Alternatively, one of the things you can know on B is this very fast on the fly deep B app smoke. It's actually incredibly easy to throw, and this is the first time I'm going to test it. You just aim at this wood thing and jump throw as this door passes your screen, and you can see that you can use that yourself as a B player to get some deep B apps control, rather than the standard where you have your cat player throw a smoke more like this. Another thing that can actually be fairly useful in some very specific situations is this boost on top of bench right here. This is something that I see people use on things like a 4-spy, where they have a scout posted up here to try and catch the B player lurking through apartments, as you will in no situation ever be posted up that high on the left. You're just not going to see it. One other thing a lot of people don't know is that you can actually support flash middle from B. Now, these aren't going to be the most effective flashes of all time, as they're not going to land very deep in middle. However, if you throw flashes over here, those will land towards middle to help your teammates out and blind some of your opponents. So just something to keep in mind. You can even throw them from way back over here. But again, they're not going to be the best flashes ever. They'll just be relatively effective. Here's a quick solo play that a lot of pros have been using recently if they are an opper and they have a good spawn. What they'll do is they'll come in a window and throw this smoke. So what you do is, as you're kind of crossing window here, you aim at this area here. With that smoke, you just jump out right afterwards, and you can op outside of connector with your own thrown smoke that will put out any Molotovs, and a very easy fallback path should you get blinded. It's just a very simple and effective way to get a kill once in a while, especially in matchmaking or pugs, where your opponents probably don't flash you off of that angle anyways. Also, something I'm sure a lot of people know, and pros haven't necessarily used very often, is this silent jump across Tetris. So what you do is you just jump across and strafe into the wall here as you get to the other side. Now, obviously, this initial jump will make noise. However, this landing won't make any noise, and that's typically what people will use to indicate to them that someone has got across. Now, this might not really be a trick, but it's very important to understand. People can see your head over a lot of these boxes on a site if they're looking correctly. So you can kind of see that player's head there if you're paying attention. However, it's more obvious with a lot of the CT models. Now, the way this works is that essentially anyone on this upper level of the bomb site, up these tiny stairs that you see around the bomb site, is going to be able to see anyone also up on that top level over these boxes. So if someone is over towards firebox, a player towards jungle can see his head over that. If someone is over here towards ramp, but a little bit out from ramp, they can see someone CT, and so on. So as long as your opponents are in specific areas, you need to be making sure that you're not allowing them to see your head over the box. This flash here is called the window flash. The reason it's popular is because it will blind a decent number of players in window if you're not up on this little ledge here, which is where you should be peeking, because otherwise you're going to get blinded by the window flash. Now here on Nuke, there's a couple of things to show. First off, please, for the love of God, make sure when you're going up this ladder, you hold W and D or W and A and look up, so that you actually go up with full speed instead of what a lot of people do, which is just looking up with only W, which is a slow way to go up a ladder. One thing a lot of people don't know is this lobby spam here in towards hut. Now, people know that the spam through this wall does a ton of damage. It actually does pretty ridiculous damage if you've got an AK, in fact. However, one thing to know is the lineup for the headshot. So this helmet here is roughly the level for a headshot on someone on this lower level here. So if there's a bot near this corner, you can aim along this line here, and I think they may have put that here intentionally, and that'll actually get that player in the head. Now, to get someone up on the upper level, you just aim obviously a bit up from that area, and you're going to be hitting them in the head as well. Now, a lot of people do know this already, but here's the lurk retake smoke that people have been throwing recently. You throw it just outside of heaven, and it creates a pretty crazy one-way and allows you to deal with a lot of people in towards the site without having to worry about this player in the corner there. And if someone is in this corner, they're basically screwed, and they should probably try to move to a different position. Now, when you're trying to take lower, something you can throw that a lot of pro teams do throw is this flash on top of the ventilation here. So what that's going to do is it's going to land on top of the vents and thereby entirely behind you and your teammates, and won't blind you at all. However, it will blind someone holding from back here fairly significantly. Lastly, and this is something a lot of people don't know, any jump you make in this game almost always will make some noise. There is sometimes it's not going to make noise. However, if you're listening in closely, even the ones that are quote silent jumps do make a jumping sound. They just don't make the landing sound. And this is very obvious in a spot like vents, where if you're in a 1v1, you can sit in the corner of vents and you will hear someone that tries to jump up back sight the vast majority of the time, and then immediately know that you can clear that angle easily. Now here on Inferno, there's a decent number of tricks that you can try and use. The first one is the Underpass Molotov. That's very effective at actually getting some kills. You aim up on 128 tick, you aim up from this. On 64 tick, you aim just about right at it, and you just run jump throw, and that's going to land inside. Seriously. You just run jump throw, and that's going to land inside of Underpass if you throw it correctly, which will actually get a surprising number of kills, because it's very common recently to actually go through Underpass to deal with people in middle instead of going out through bottom mid and getting hit with nade damage. Another nade set that you can throw, most people know the retake banana utility from on top of first oranges. However, you can also throw that from back here towards new box. You aim for a jump throw right here with the molly, and then the smoke you aim at the top left of this thing here. You can throw the smoke first or the molly first, it doesn't really matter, and this molly does in fact, if thrown correctly, spread to this back corner and get all of this area. Now, a couple of glitches that are definitely not allowed in the professional play, but somehow you could try using yourself in a pug, are these ones here. So this is the one of them. What you do is you crouch, hold W and D in this corner, jump, and then uncrouch just near the top of your jump, and that's going to allow you to glitch up the wall here. You're not going to be accurate, but if you've got something like an MP9 or a Mac 10, which is very high jumping accuracy, you could potentially grab a kill. Similarly, you can do the same thing here on apartments, although it's really got no use in general. If you come into this corner and do just about the same thing except W and A instead of W and D, the problem is you can't look very far to the right before falling off. One thing that's getting on my nerves a little bit, so I'll say it here, in order to boost up on truck here at the beginning of the round, don't come here and crouch. Rather, you should stand here and your teammate should jump off of the barrel onto your head like this. That makes a much easier boost that requires a little bit less time. So you can actually spam the players boosted up in this boost, not this back one, through this window here. You have to aim higher than you'd be expecting, as you're probably thinking aiming down here, but that only gets people, you know, if they're dropped down there somehow. But if you aim up here, you're going to be able to get the kill on these players pretty easily, and it does a good amount of damage as well. Over towards B, useful for retakes. People always mess this up. It's actually really easy. If you want to spam someone on the opposite side of dark, you just aim through this second window, and that's going to be this player here. You aim probably a little bit lower than most people are expecting to actually get full damage on that player. And then for the player up top, you just aim a little bit higher than expected, right? That's going to be the player up top. People always mess this up, or alternatively, they try to spam through this area here, which, by the way, you cannot spam through. Another thing that a lot of people mess up is the molly car, where they have mollies that don't actually burn behind the car, and so mid-round oppers will be sitting here, you think it's clear, but it's not. A pretty foolproof way to deal with that is as you come around this corner, instead of aiming it directly at car, there are ways to throw it directly at car, but the way I like to do it is aim up from this left side pillar to near the top of this fence, and that will pretty much always be getting behind car here if people are trying to peek it, as well as in front of car, as a lot of people seem to think that throwing mollies that just land behind car only are actually useful. So again, you just come around this corner, aim up from this pillar, right to there, that's going to land behind car very consistently and get this entire area. Another thing people should generally know is this flash here, called the God Flash. You just aim basically in this corner here and jump throw. On 128 tick, that will land perfectly. On 64 tick, just aim a decent ways up from there until you get used to it, and that'll be the same flash. The point of this type of flash is that it blinds pretty much everyone in sight, including this player playing on top of first oranges, and you can have your team do something like walk up along this wall, the flash pops, and they run directly in. One thing to keep in mind though is there's kind of two variations of this. There's one that won't blind a player up here, and there's one that will. So if someone says they're throwing a God Flash, just to be safe, I would generally turn away, but the point is to go in off of it, and then you can actually chain this flash with another flash into deep CT like that. And that flash is going to land over the ledge here and blind any one CT, and your teammates are probably going to be looking front sight, or at least they should be, so they can go in with that as well. Anyways, thanks for watching, I hope this helped, and if you're wondering where the other maps went, they went to my Patreon. Just kidding. I just didn't have anything new on those maps, so I'm not going to force it. I'm not going to try and add in extra things that are irrelevant.